the United States, with all its power and its expertise, could intervene in a country like Iraq, and we could make Iraq into a liberal, democratic, capitalist, flourishing society. Now you're smiling, you're laughing, and you ought to be laughing because of the absurdity of the expectations.
Dr. Bacevich, what was our military policy in the Middle East in the decade, that specific decade between the Cold War up to 9/11?
Well, the mission of the United States Central Command, which had been created
by Carter,
actually by Reagan.
Okay.
Carter began the process. Reagan actually did it. Was focused initially on the Soviets.
Yeah.
Central Command's job was when the Soviets invaded Iran, the United States was going to go fight to defend Iran. Again, all kinds of ironies here. When the Soviet Union collapses at the end of the 1970s and the Cold War ends, Cold War goes away. Am I getting my dates wrong?
I think it's at the end of the 1980s.
1980s, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
In a sense, Central Command has accomplished its mission.
Hence my question, what is our policy now? Yeah.
And then Saddam Hussein picks up at the baton by invading and conquering Kuwait.
Yeah.
Remember, Saddam has been our ally against Iran.
A war that lasted 9 years. Yeah.
And now Saddam decides he has his own ideas, occupies Kuwait, and the United States responds by putting together a pretty impressive military coalition that has the assigned mission of liberating Iraq. That leads to Operation Desert Storm.
Liberating Iraq or liberating Kuwait?
I'm sorry, forgive me. It has the assigned mission of liberating Kuwait.
Yeah, because liberating Iraq comes a decade later.
Yeah, there you go.
That's another precedent.
I'm getting ahead of the story.
Exactly. Yeah.
We remember Operation Desert Storm as a great victory.
Yeah.
And in some respects, it was a great victory. In other respects, it was not. It was not in the sense that expectations that the outcome of the war would doom Saddam Hussein turned out to be not true. He survived. Because he survived, he continued to be seen as a threat to the region. I don't think he really was, but certainly the perception in Washington and in places like Saudi Arabia was that Saddam was a continuing threat. The U.S. responded by increasing the U.S. military presence in the region.
And also we had like no-fly zones and stuff like that over
like
Iraq.
No-fly zones. Like U.S. troops based in Saudi Arabia, which many Muslims found offensive from a religious point of view. And so the United States was now ready to go to war after Desert Storm, continued to be ready to go to war with Iraq. Iraq was now the new permanent enemy. I'm not sure where you want to go with that.
First of all,
I'm sorry. You wanted to talk about 9/11.
No, I do want to talk about 9/11, but when you say Iraq, the new permanent enemy, that's not all that impressive. Iraq is not USSR, or it's not today's China, right? Am I underplaying?
Your assessment is a very realistic one. That's not the perception, however, that prevailed in Washington.
Really?
Certainly not. The look on your face tells me you can't believe that anybody
I
would
mean,
think that
Iraq couldn't beat
poses.
Iran. Not that Iran was a nothing. No, Iran had a formidable, defense
I'm with
establishment.
you. I'm with
Oh,
you.
you're with me.
But
Okay.
I'm just telling you
Wow.
that in Washington, the perception was that a false perception, in my view, the perception was that Saddam Hussein continued to pose a threat to the region and therefore continued to be a problem for the United States.
You mentioned
Now,
9/11.
one more piece there. And
Please,
so
please.
therefore, after Desert Storm, we increased the number of U.S. forces stationed in the region. In particular, we declared that we are permanently stationing U.S. forces in Saudi Arabia. Who takes offense at that?
I don't know. Iran?
Who's the guy that gets us on 9/11?
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's why you said, yeah,
Bin Laden,
exactly.
is this genuine on his part? Is it made up? I have no idea. But Bin Laden declares that he is deeply offended by the presence of infidels in the land of the two holy places. And he issues fatwas 1998 and 2000, my dates may be wrong, declaring war against the United States. And the purpose of this war that he has declared is to get the Americans out of Saudi Arabia and to get rid of the corrupt, from his point of view, corrupt Saudi regime and purify Islam. So he's declared war on us. We're worried about Saddam Hussein, and we're basically sitting on our hands while the conspiracy develops that leads to the 9/11 bombings.
Before we get to 9/11, I just want to make sure I have sort of mentally, I have set the stage for myself to follow this. The Cold War and the Soviet threat pretty much ends by the late 1980s.
Got it.
Gone. We have this big military strategy to confront the USSR. The irony, if they attack Iran, Islamic will go in and would defend Iran. Now we're sitting on our hands. That threat is gone. We replace that to some at least to some extent.
You got this figured out
with Iraq. Now we're there militarily, and lo and behold, the tragedy of 9/11 happens. I don't want to get so much into our invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. What I'm wondering, I hope it's okay that I ask this question. Was that the only thing? Was that the only path for us?
No.
No. Do you follow what I mean when I say, was that the only military path for us? Or
no?
Okay. Please go ahead.
Back up a little bit.
Okay.
9/11 happens. I think the impact on the United States, on our foreign policy establishment, was equivalent to the impact on Israel when Hamas invades Gaza.
October 7, 2023.
We are shocked.
Exactly.
We are appalled. We are frightened.
Yeah,
we cannot believe that this happened. We want revenge. So what does the United States do? As the George W. Bush administration, we declare a global war on terrorism. Now, there are people at the time, not in government, there are observers at the time who say, hey, wait a second. You can't declare war on terrorism in any meaningful sense.
Why not?
You're not going to be able to destroy terrorism any more than you can destroy naval warfare. But nonetheless, that's the way Bush frames it: global war on terrorism. And then he operationalizes the phrase. What do we actually do? Well, we invade Afghanistan. Why? Afghanistan actually has nothing to do with 9/11. I mean, the nation state is not involved in planning 9/11.
They harbored Al-Qaeda.
It hosts Al-Qaeda.
Okay.
And in that sense, one could argue that the United States needed to retaliate against Afghanistan not because they were directly involved in the 9/11 attacks, but because of their permissive attitude with regard to al-Qaeda. We needed to show clearly that anybody who facilitates terrorist attacks against the United States was going to suffer big time.
Yeah.
That's the argument for invading Afghanistan. That's not an argument for a 20-year presence in Afghanistan in a foolish nation building.
Yeah.
But still, Afghanistan, it was always the sideshow. What happens after the invasion of Afghanistan? The George W. Bush administration says, aha, now we can get Saddam Hussein. Wait a second. What does Saddam Hussein have to do with 9/11? Nada. Nothing. No evidence whatsoever that Iraq was involved in 9/11. Well, the Bush administration says, yeah, it's true, but they're developing weapons of mass destruction, and they could well pass the weapons of mass destruction to terrorist organizations, and that would pose a real threat to the United States, and therefore, we're going to invade Iraq and we're going to overthrow Saddam Hussein.
So you're clearly against that second invasion,
oh
right?
My God. I mean,
it's an understatement. Yeah.
I mean, the expectation, again, we're going to go back to how big a threat was Iraq. It wasn't a threat.
Yeah.
The expectation in 2003 within the military is we're going to assemble a task force and we're going to go in on the ground, in the air, and we're going to make short work of that regime. We're going to win a quick victory, and we're going to demonstrate beyond a shadow of a doubt the strength of the United States military. And to top it off, we're going to create a democracy there as a demonstration for how the rest of the region can be democratized. That's the expectation in 2003. Guess what? Doesn't work out.
Let's talk about the alternatives. So it's 9/11 happens. Now is September 12th, 2001, the next day.
Yep.
What other alternative military paths were before us?
I identify the perpetrators. Well, it wasn't Saddam Hussein, except marginally, it wasn't the Afghan regime. It was an organization called Al-Qaeda with a specific leader. The strategic alternative is don't declare a global war on terrorism and then launch conventional invasions of countries.
Yeah.
Dismantle Al-Qaeda, which probably means more of a covert war.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, as you and I speak, the big controversy of the moment, one big controversy of the moment is will the Israelis realize that this punitive campaign against Gaza certainly kills a lot of people, but it's not going to make Hamas go away. And they seem to be transitioning to what would be a more targeted and careful and precise offensive directed against the Hamas leadership. Hard to do. Will require a lot of patience. That's what we should have done after 9/11 with regard to Al-Qaeda.
We should not have invaded. You mentioned the term, which we've been hearing for more than 2 decades now, nation building, building democracies in the Middle East. Afghanistan was just a complete disaster. And then Iraq hasn't fared much better either.
As you and I talk,
the
United States conducted an airstrike in Baghdad. Yesterday.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I have irony up on. This is my question, I guess. Is some of what we do abroad, militarily speaking, specifically in the Middle East, based on our memory of what we did after World War II, how we turned Japan and West Germany into democracies? Is that something that is still in the consciousness of the military echelon of our country?
I don't know. My guess is, however, remember, so we go to war in 1993, and memories of our success post World War II in Germany and Japan are still alive.
Yeah, there are people that are still alive from there.
I would argue that more important in that moment was this crazy notion that history itself had come to an end and all alternatives to liberal democratic capitalism have been exhausted. And therefore, the United States, with all its power and its expertise, could intervene in a country like Iraq, and we could make Iraq into a liberal, democratic, capitalist, flourishing society. Now you're smiling, you're laughing, and you ought to be laughing because of the absurdity of the expectations. But I'm telling you, my reading of the situation is people in the George W. Bush administration really believed that that's what we were going to do in Iraq.
Because
and of course, it was folly.
Communism had fallen spectacularly, and
Right.
China wasn't the power that it is now back then.
Right.
I see. Let's take a break here. Stay with me and Dr. Bacevich as we get into the perspective.